Well, we have the news from the toss of the fourth T20I between India and New Zealand. And India, surprisingly, although not that surprisingly considering this series, but overall with the trend going, I'm always wary at tosses. I'm being very honest with you. So in that sense, very glad to see Suryakumar Yadav spin the coin, win the toss, and opt to bowl first. Two reasons why he said it's bowling first. One is, of course, the pitch is a belter and he's expecting it to get better at night. Second, more important, the dew factor. As he said, we'd been practicing in the evenings, looking at how it is that the match conditions would be, and we realized that there was an onset of dew. So in order to negate and mitigate for that, just easier to bat second and ensure you know what it is that you're chasing. So far, so good. And whilst I expected a lot of changes to India as far as their playing 11 was concerned, given that the series is already wrapped up, we haven't gotten too many changes, but we've gotten one very interesting change that is going to set tongues wagging. Why did I say that? Well, let's take a look at the playing 11, then I'll talk you through that big change. The playing 11 is as follows. You've got Sanju Samson, who keeps his spot, along with Abhishek Sharma at the top of the order. Suryakumar Yadav is at 3, Shivam Dubey is at 4, Hardik Pandya is at 5, Rinku Singh is at 6, Harshit Rana is at 7, Arshdeep Singh is at 8, Ravi Bishnoi is at 9, Kuldeep Yadav is at 10, and Jasprit Bumrah is at 11. Now, if you're seeing this playing 11, the first thought that comes to mind is, wait, hold on, what's happened to the batting at 8 philosophy no matter what? That is what has changed. And question number 2, where exactly is Ishan Kishan? Well, I'll answer question number 2 before I get to question number 1. Ishan Kishan, according to Suryakumar Yadav, has picked up a niggle. And so in his place has come Arshdeep Singh, who sat out the last game. And, well, this is a bit of a surprise because at first thought I was thinking, wait, surely they could have brought in someone else as a batter, right? And so far you're thinking, who's in the squad? Now, the obvious option would have been to bring back a Tilak, but obviously Tilak is not back in the squad, so he's not really an option. You could have gone for an Akshar if you wanted to ensure that your bowling depth, your batting depth as well as bowling depth remain, because again, Akshar would be the natural one, although he'd probably come in place of Bishnoi. But then, instead, you brought in a pacer. And then I went through the squad and I'm like, hold on one second. Shreyas Iyer is in the squad and he's not getting a game. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of conspiracy theorists out there. There's been some talk that one of the reasons, and this is, by the way, social media chatter, and it's nothing to do with what's happening in real life, is that one of the reasons that Shreyas doesn't play as much is because he's direct competition to Sky. First off, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I do think, however, that they are prioritizing giving those who are in the World Cup 15 more game time. So in that sense, bringing in an Arshdeep makes plenty of sense. And of course, it's very rare that you get to see Arshdeep and Bumrah along with a Harshit. That's a very rare combination in T20Is, and you've got 2 full-time spinners in Ravi Bishnoi and Varun Chakravarti. So you've got, wait, hold on, there's no Varun, my bad. So this is the combination you're going with, and it's pretty interesting because again, it is really one of those things where I'm thinking, where exactly is a Shreyas Iyer? Shreyas Iyer is the main miss, and he could have been the most obvious person to slot in place of Ishan Kishan. You could have played him at 3, Sky could have remained at 4, and you would have had your 8 batting options, A, and B, you would have actually given some much needed game time to someone who, whilst I know is not part of the World Cup squad, well, he may very well be needed. Again, Tilak is progressing well at the Centre of Excellence, what was formerly known as the National Cricket Academy, but it is worth noting that he is expected to join up with the squad only on February 3rd, which means it's very touch and go. If I was trying to have a risk-averse approach, I'd give Shreyas a game or two and say, listen, you stay in match fitness just in case. Because again, at that point, if Tilak is not fit, you may really need to make a change, although they might just take the risk and continue on with him anyway. So I found this an interesting one. Why no Shreyas Iyer? Yes, I understand that you want to actually give all your World Cup bound players game time. I don't think it would have harmed to give Shreyas a game over here. The series is over. You don't really need to be playing for anything other than match practice. So in that sense, perhaps I think you could have seen a Shreyas there. On the other hand, the logic which I do also understand is that you want to give your World Cup bound players more game time. So that's why Shreyas, despite being part of the squad, continues to sit out as of now. So this really is where things are interesting. Now, obviously, when it comes to India's records in T20s in Vizag, which is worth noting because that is in fact the venue where the game is being played. Well, you've got 4 games which have been played so far, T20Is featuring India at Vizag, of which India have won 3 and lost only 1. In fact, the last game, and this is an interesting fact, right? The last game that was played in Vizag, a T20I match featuring India, happened to be the captaincy debut of Suryakumar Yadav. In fact, he was asked about it at the toss. He said, yeah, very fond memories. It was a match against Australia that India ended up winning. It was a high-scoring match. Josh Inglis, I remember, was among the runs. And Sky actually scored had a very attacking knock and ensured that India got home with about 1 or 2 balls to spare. So it was a close game, very high scoring, and I think that's what you can expect in this particular game as well. Vizag has usually been fairly batter friendly, although you can expect a little bit of early swing given the air conditions around. But usually once it eases out, it is very batter friendly. Remember, this is the same venue also where a Mitch Starc ran through India's top order in an ODI game in 2023, and so brutal was the onslaught thereafter that came from Travis Head and Mitch Marsh. Now, what was a 50-over game? Yes, it was an ODI, finished in under 20 overs, and of course they didn't have a big target to chase down, agreed, but the nature of the assault was brutal. Of course, that's also something that could have perhaps prompted India to chase, because the wicket just tends to get much better under lights and once the dew has set in. So it's an interesting conundrum. Again, if you're looking at this game, there's nothing really to play for as far as the series is concerned. That's done and dusted, even if New Zealand win the next 2 T20Is. However, if you're India, looking at these games and looking to approach them with maximum ferocity, intensity. In fact, Sky was noted at the toss saying that I really hope the boys are up for this game, because I'm expecting that it should be a good one, and I hope that we can give the crowd plenty of entertainment, which is of course another thing that has been the hallmark of this side. Aside from being a winning team, they also look to go out there and play with panache, play with style. It's why the attacking play of an Abhishek Sharma is so encouraged. It's why you see the likes of Shivam Dube and Hardik Pandya and even Sky, when on form, just look to go at it, go hell for leather at every ball. Don't necessarily look to save your wicket, because you're batting with so many batters. Even if you lose a couple of wickets, you've got enough batting in there that if you get 1 or 2 big performances, you're going to be posting a decent total regardless. But this is an interesting 11 really, mainly because it's very rare to see India, particularly in the Gautam Gambhir era of coach, deviate from playing with at least 8 batting options. You've done that today, and the fact that you have is in itself very interesting, because again, as I said, there was a batting option in a Shreyas Iyer who you could have turned to ensure that the parity remains, but instead you've subbed out a pure batter in Ishan Kishan for a bowler in Arshdeep Singh, which is very, very interesting to say the least. You could of course have potentially brought in someone else, as I said, but I think what the team are prioritizing is giving all of their players, their World Cup bound players, some game time. It's a shame obviously that Tilak can't be part of the series, because given that he suffered an injury, he really needs match practice, and I think the only bit of match practice you could expect to see him get is that one warm-up game that India will be playing prior to the T20 World Cup. But such are the circumstances around his injury, and I think the BCCI are doing good by actually playing it safe and not rushing him back into fitness, because if you rush him back and then there's a recurrence, it pretty much wrecks his T20 World Cup in its entirety. So as I said, this could be an interesting game. Vizag, considering that chasing teams usually tend to find it better, I would say India have a slight edge, in fact a more than significant edge, because of course New Zealand also, the kind of cricket that they played in this series hasn't been very good. And that's me being polite. I think at times their batting is reminiscent of the T20 batting of eras beyond. You've had teams who've come, and if they lost a couple of wickets, they'll try and slow things down and then try and perhaps get things going later, but that's not the kind of cricket that this Indian team plays, and that's why they are leading the series 3-0. If you ask me for a prediction, I think India can restrict New Zealand. Even if they get to 180, 190, even 200, I back this Indian team to chase it down. But what do you guys think? Let us know that in the comments below, and don't forget, as always, to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, follow us also on social media. We're on Instagram, X and Facebook, and stay tuned for more such updates from the world of sport.